Eamonn Holmes suffered a stroke last week. He's been poorly for a while. Many of you have commented on that. He suffered a stroke last week and is currently recovering in hospital with his loved ones by his side. He's up and talking, and we are sending all your messages on to him to wish him well on his way so he can get back at this very desk very soon indeed. So please do keep them coming in at gbnews.com/yoursay or scan the QR code. And I will read as many out as well as passing one to Eamonn himself. I just want to read this one out for now because this sums up the Eamonn that I've known for many, many decades as well. This is from Leonard. Leonard says, wishing you all the best, Eamonn. I still remember you cracking a joke when presenting at a corporate event I was at many years ago in Brighton. The sales director loved himself, and Eamonn followed the guy's speech with, out loud, if he was chocolate, he'd eat himself. It slapped the bloke's massive ego straight down, as well as bringing the house down. And that, I think, Leonard, just nails what Eamonn is like. He's very down to earth. My husband used to work with him as well as a stagehand back in the day. And Eamonn would rather sit and talk to the lads who were doing the painting and sort of like moving scenery around rather than hang out with the executives at the TV. So that is the Eamonn Holmes we know and love. So Eamonn, if you're watching, and you probably are, mate, get yourself back here soon. Okay, now much more of the show and more Eamonn comments coming up after the news headline. And yeah, my usual partner in crime is Lewis Mackenzie reading the news headlines now.
Dawn, thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's just after 2 o'clock. Here are your latest GB News headlines. GB News presenter Eamonn Holmes is recovering in hospital after suffering a stroke. He was taken ill last week and is now currently responding well to treatment. Eamonn is Britain's longest-serving breakfast news presenter and currently hosts GB News Breakfast alongside Ellie Costello. Everyone here at GB News wishes him a speedy recovery, and we look forward to welcoming him back when he is ready to return. Peace talks between senior US and Iranian officials are underway in Pakistan as the fragile ceasefire still holds. Donald Trump wants the Strait of Hormuz to be reopened as soon as possible, while Iran is insisting on commitments to the end of fighting in Lebanon. US Vice President J.D. Vance, who arrived this morning, says Washington is ready to negotiate an end to the 6-week-old war in good faith, but Tehran says it does not trust the US. Delegations from Lebanon and Israel are set to meet for talks on Tuesday. The astronauts on the Artemis II mission have returned to Earth after completing the first crewed voyage to the moon in more than half a century.
Confirmed.
Copy splashdown, waiting on VLDR.
Splashdown confirmed at 7:07 p.m. Central Time, 5:07 p.m. Pacific
Time.
That was
a very, very special event yesterday. We finally returned to the moon.
The Orion capsule splashed down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California after 9 days in space. NASA officials have described it as a fantastic feat and say that there was a lot more to do in space exploration. The government had no choice but to shelve its deal to hand over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius in the face of US opposition. That's according to a former top civil servant, Lord MacDonald, who said the UK was forced to pull the plans after the US president described it as an act of great stupidity. A government source says that the situation is deeply frustrating, but Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch welcomed the move and called it another humiliating U-turn.
That deal should never have been on the table. Paying £35 billion to give away territory we already own at a time when so many people in this country are dealing with the cost of living just showed that they were not in any way thinking clearly. I'm very pleased that this has now been put out to grass. The government should not pick up this legislation again. It was completely wrong for them to do so. And I'm very grateful to all of the Conservatives, the MPs and the peers who fought it every step of the way.
A Sudanese man has been charged with endangering life after 4 migrants died trying to board a small boat.
Well, that's interesting. Let's jump somewhere else in the world. Let's see.
He was accused of piloting the boat from
idea of finishing off Iran. I mean, has Pakistan already prepared its own plan B to protect its borders from any kind of regional fallout?
Well, Pakistan took these border measures when the war started. So I don't think there's anything additional for Pakistan to do. Obviously, Pakistan remains very concerned that the talks should not fail. And if they did, it would lead to the kind of chaos possibly in a neighboring country that could spill over into Pakistan. But I think here people are not so pessimistic. The talks have barely begun. So I think to start talking about whether they can fail or not, I think it's too early in the game. Let the talks be an icebreaker first between the two warring sides, and then let's see how they get on trying to find some kind of a common ground in their very, conflicting
common ground
positions that are evident in the 15 points by the US and the 10 points by Iran.
Ambassador, you're right. It is early days in the talks, but I asked you that specific question for a reason, because there is an interesting development on the sidelines of talks in Islamabad. Saudi's defense ministry says a Pakistani military force contingent, including fighter jets, has just reached the King Abdulaziz air base in the east of Saudi Arabia. Is Pakistan trying to essentially tell Iran, we are your friends at the negotiating table, but we are the Saudi kingdom's protectors on the battlefield if there isn't progress in Islamabad?
No, I don't think one should overread this. I think these sorts of exercises and these sorts of defense cooperation it carries on. It's an ongoing process.
Ambassador, the arrival of these troops comes on the specific morning in which the highest level diplomatic talks ever, at least in modern times, is about to start in Islamabad. You're saying that this was just random timing?
No, I'm not saying it's random. I'm saying that one should not overread this to be some kind of a prep or preparation in case the talks fail. I think it's too early, really, to be talking.
Negotiations to see what else is happening in the world. Should we go see what's happening?
There they are. Now, on X, Kalibaf, the parliament speaker, said the discussions will only take place if there is an Israeli ceasefire in Lebanon, and also mentioned the release of blocked Iranian assets. So we don't have a lot of details. We don't know whether the two sides will hold direct talks or indirect talks, but at least we know both are there and have met Pakistani officials. We will, of course, bring you the latest on those talks from our World Affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, who is in Islamabad for us. But first, let's bring you some of today's other news. 6 people remain in hospital, with one in a serious condition after the bus crash which killed a British tourist in the Canary Islands yesterday. The 77-year-old man died when the bus that was carrying 27 British passengers left a motorway and plunged into a ravine on the island of La Gomera. A man has been charged in connection with the deaths of 4 migrants in the Channel on Thursday. 2 men and 2 women died while attempting to board a dinghy out at sea south of Calais. The Sudanese national allegedly piloted the small boat from France to the UK, and he is due to face court today. A 9-year-old boy has been rescued in France after allegedly being locked inside his father's van since 2024. Police found him malnourished and unable to walk. His father has been detained on kidnapping charges, and an investigation is underway. GB News and former Sky News presenter Eamon Holmes is recovering in hospital following a stroke. That's according to the broadcaster. In a statement, GB News.
Somewhere else in the world. What else is going on here? U.S. and Iran peace talks still underway in Pakistan.
Oil of also a lot there. One thing I suppose we should be grateful for is we're not hearing currently not only have Iran been talking about charging $2 million like a toll booth to let a boat go through, at one point Donald Trump, not so long ago, was also talking about potentially tolling ships and saying, well, we might have a joint operation between the US and Iran. Thankfully, he's not talking about that, and he's also talking about clearing out the strait as a favour. Of course, many would say that this is the Strait of Hormuz is now in this state because of the actions that America and Israel have taken, and that this was entirely predictable that Iran would take this action. But massive consequences for all of us.
Well, indeed. And the clashes between Israel and Hezbollah have been still carrying on overnight. Now, Israel aren't actually at these peace talks, are they, from what we're aware?
No, they are having separate talks with Lebanon on Tuesday, but that is another massive sticking point because the framework of a ceasefire that was brokered by Pakistan, according to Israel and the US, a ceasefire on Israel's attacks on Lebanon was not part of that, and yet Iran and Pakistan, who brokered the deal, are absolutely adamant that that was. So we had, after the ceasefire was supposedly in place, Israel had an absolute bombing blitz on Lebanon. Iran threatened to pull out the ceasefire altogether. I think overnight about 3
the negotiations
people have been killed, but a hugely volatile and still very, very worrying situation.
Catherine Forster, thank you so much for keeping abreast. I'm glad you are, because it's like, oh my gosh, every 5 seconds you look down at the screen, oh really? Something else has happened. If you want to keep up, by the way, on Truth Social, you can follow President Trump directly, and he does put these most amazing posts out. Lots of words involved. In any case, that was Chief Political Correspondent Catherine Forster keeping us up to date on that one. OK, now let's move on, shall we? We have the statement there. A British pensioner has been killed and 27 other
posted on Truth Social about sending oil to markets usually served by tankers going through the Strait of Hormuz. This is what he said. Massive numbers of completely empty oil tankers, some of the largest anywhere in the world, are heading right now to the United States to load up with the best and sweetest oil and gas anywhere in the world. We have more oil than the next 2 largest oil economies combined and higher quality. We're waiting for you. Quick turnaround. Well, for more on this, I'm joined by our military analyst, Sean Bell, and our Middle East commentator, Tara Kangarloo, who have been following developments of things that are coming out, although, of course, not that much is officially coming out of this meeting that we're seeing in Islamabad. Tara, if I can just start with you, just talk us through the Iranian delegation, because we just had images, actually, of them arriving and meeting the Pakistani Prime Minister.
Indeed, Barbara, this is actually an unprecedented delegation if you compare it to that of the 2015 nuclear deals, rather. That was one that I covered closely, in fact, from Iran for another American network. But what I can tell you is, in addition to diplomatic, political intelligence, as well as financial and legal experts, you have IRGC officials, multiple of them, and it's now being headed by the Speaker of the Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, someone that we've been talking about extensively throughout the course of this war, someone that, as we see this deck of cards shuffled, has emerged as a leading figure, setting the tone of the talks and also heading the delegation. Again, we need to underscore the fact that he is a military official. He is an IRGC insider with political, financial, and military ties, again, with the Revolutionary Guard. And him being now in charge tells us a lot as to who's in control in Iran, and the fact that we are told by the Iranians that he has the blessing of the supreme leader.
Whereas, interestingly, Sean, when we look at the American delegation, it just tells us who was against the war initially, because all reports indicate that J.D. Vance actually was not a supporter, never has been, of this military intervention. So interesting that he's effectively leading a delegation, I guess, to ease trust, of which there is little.
Yeah, I mean, undoubtedly, we could read so much into this. I mean, the very fact we talked about, President Trump's latest outburst, you go, is that being played to a domestic audience rather than international? Who knows? The good thing is that we understand peace talks are underway. We understand they're trilateral. What does that actually mean? Is it some little
in the talks is going to be when it will morph into face-to-face.
Focusing on the conflict, waiting for it to end so they can go back to working for a democratic Sudan. Hiba Morgan, Al Jazeera, Khartoum.
An Israeli drone strike has killed 6 people in central Gaza, including a journalist from Al Aqsa TV. Several others have been wounded in the attack. Earlier this week, an Israeli strike killed Al Jazeera journalist Mohammed Wisha. Israeli attacks have killed at least 738 people since the ceasefire came into effect in October. Tarek Abu Zoom has more from central Gaza.
Gaza is poised on a knife edge, and Israel is ostensibly adopting a firm political and military line towards Gaza, and this has been pretty much clear through its mounting military momentum that has been widely recorded since the ceasefire was brokered in October last year. At this site in Al Bureij refugee camp, a group of Palestinians were killed by a drone strike. Here on the ground we can see the scene of blood mixed with the sand as a result of the airstrike, and the shrapnel that hit this site has been very much obvious here on the ground, and this is where they were sitting, in fact, and we can see that this site has been severely damaged. And at the other end there, the bodies have been brought this morning from Al Aqsa Hospital in order to be mourned by their families at Al Bureij refugee camp. What has been very remarkable is that this site is too far away from the yellow demarcation line, and we did not hear a justification so far from the Israeli military. Now they are trying to be reunited with their loved ones inside this fragile makeshift tent, say goodbye to their loved ones who have been killed by the Israeli military at this site. So apparently there's no any sort of respite in terms of the Israeli airstrikes, and also in terms of the Israeli clear strategy to keep pounding Gaza, even during a time that's supposed to be a ceasefire, where families are supposed to at least feel a relative sense of alleviation, not just in terms of the humanitarian situation, but also in terms of the security level as well. But on the ground, people are left in limbo, and it seems to be not the last funeral in this traversed territory. Tarek Abu Zoom, Al Jazeera, from Al Bureij refugee camp, Palestine.
Israel has restricted the movement of Palestinian Christians celebrating Holy Saturday in occupied East Jerusalem.
Well, Israel throws up to something.
Security forces set up several checkpoints and kicked out worshippers from the Armenian church. This comes after Israel closed the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and Al-Aqsa Mosque for 40 days, preventing prayers at both of those sites under the pretext of the war in Iran. Nearly 6 months after a US brokered so-called ceasefire took effect in Gaza, hundreds of thousands of displaced families are still living in tents and makeshift shelters. The UN is bringing in fiberglass houses as a temporary alternative, but it says nowhere near enough are being allowed into the Strip, and families say they're not a lasting solution. Ibrahim Al-Khalili has this from Gaza City.
In Gaza, rows of tents stretch across open land, home to families who have lost everything. Some families are moving into temporary housing units. They are made of fiberglass and are stronger than the tents, but is still unable to provide real protection.
This house is better than the tarpaulin tents we used to live in. Those would collapse on my children with the slightest wind. Our bedding and clothes would get soaked. Even now, there's still no drainage system for rainwater.
The United Nations says at least 1.3 million Palestinians are still displaced, living in nearly 1,000 makeshift camps across the Strip. It's the result of more than 2 years of relentless Israeli bombardment. 81% of all structures have been damaged or completely destroyed. Among them, more than 320,000 houses. For people here, the promised rebuilding has yet to materialize.
We are 6 months into the ceasefire. We were told reconstruction would begin, but here we are. The situation is still the same. It's actually getting worse. The tents don't protect us, the buildings are still destroyed, and there are no solutions. Even the school students don't have proper buildings.
The UN says the gap between what is needed and what is being delivered is vast.
At this stage, we are bringing in the very bare minimum. We are prioritizing families according to their needs, but everybody needs and wants a proper shelter solution. We're looking at it. We are preparing to scale up now at the provision of RHUs, relief housing units.
For now, these shelters remain a temporary answer to a much deeper crisis.
Displaced families in Gaza say fiberglass tents are sturdier, but they are still a temporary fix. And the
It's an interesting
shelters...
solution. It's a solution that many countries like America or Canada or Western European countries need to consider as well.
Rahim Al-Khalili, Al Jazeera, Gaza City, Palestine.
Humanity's first lunar voyage in more than half a century has ended with a dramatic splashdown in the Pacific Ocean. All 4 astronauts from the Artemis 2 mission are safe and after going further into space than any human.
We finally got back to the moon.
A historic 10-day mission around the moon and back again, the first in more than 50 years.
Splashdown confirmed at 7:07 p.m.
Sighs of relief as the Artemis
incredible.
2 team splashed down safely in the
Absolutely
Pacific
incredible.
Ocean, re-entering the atmosphere at almost 40,000
Finally, some
kilometers
positive
per
news.
hour. The Orion space capsule hurtled towards Earth. As it did, plasma buildup cut all communications for 6 minutes, and the capsule glowed orange and yellow. Outside, temperatures on the heat shield shot towards 2,700 degrees Celsius. This was the most dangerous part of the mission that had set new records.
And there go the first series of parachutes.
You are inspiring. That is not...
The Orion space capsule carried 4 astronauts further from Earth than any other human had traveled before, in a journey of over 400,000 kilometers. The USS John P. Murtha was on the scene to recover the space capsule. Medical officers entered the Orion space capsule and confirmed all 4 astronauts were safe before they were allowed to exit onto the raft and were airlifted one by one to the nearby ship.
As we begin to hoist
The mission signals the beginning of a new era of space travel and demonstrates new capabilities needed for future missions into deep space.
Second astronaut now. Can they do it twice?
Now safely back home, it may take a few
let's
days
do it
for
again.
Commander Reed Wiseman and his team to get used to life back on Earth. Joel Evans, Al Jazeera.
Tremendous achievement there. Well, our extensive coverage of the high-level negotiations between the US and Iran continues in just a moment's time.
All right. Well, again, thanks very much. We're going to be concluding for today. For those that joined us, that was just a brief news synopsis from around the world.